So we're coming to the part of the practice where we set a theme. And if you've read the article that I've written and posted up on the website, you'll be aware that the selected themes for this term are to do with the Yamas and the Niyamas. And they're like a code of ethics, if you like, that we work with in yoga. And in the classical yoga texts, they are the preliminary practices that we work with before we even get to the practice of asana, which are the physical practices that most of us are familiar with. So the first yama, and actually in many respects the golden rule of all yoga practice, is Ahimsa, which translates as non-violence. And many of us would perhaps assume that that didn't really apply to us. How does that really apply to me? But if we change from non-violence to not causing harm, we begin to realize that actually it's very appropriate to all of us. And that whilst intentionally we perhaps don't cause harm, often unintentionally we cause a lot of harm, either through our thoughts or in our words or in our actions. How do we bring Ahimsa into our physical yoga practice? Because I've written a lot about Ahimsa for you to think about it and reflect on it. So I don't need to go into that particularly at this point. Hopefully you'll look at the website and see what I've posted up and have a brief understanding at least of what Ahimsa could mean to you. But bringing it into a physical practice is something else, and sometimes a lot of confusion can be created around how that influences our practice. Just before we move on, I want to just say that in our classes, and if you're not familiar with my classes, it's okay, but we normally select a theme and we use that theme throughout a whole term of classes. And in doing that, we become really familiar with what that concept actually means to each one of us individually. And we often share our thoughts, so we get lots of ideas and we begin to understand the meaning of that concept more profoundly. So we want to choose one of the themes and continue to work with it for at least 10 to 12 weeks so that we get real insights into what that theme actually means. So let's come back to Ahimsa, not causing harm. Think about for a moment your relationship with your body. Just like any other relationship we have in our lives, we can often find that there are some aspects of our relationships that are a little bit domineering, perhaps maybe abusive in some ways. In other words, when we think of how we relate to the body, it's very often that we're forcing the body into exercises, postures, all kinds of activities without really truly considering the body's comfort, without really being very kind and considerate towards the body. And often we end up with injuries and many other problems because we haven't considered Ahimsa. So coming to very basic yoga practice, when we start a theme, we sit for a moment, we check that we're sitting comfortably, that we're supporting the body nicely so that it can relax and feel at ease. And we bring our minds to focus on that concept. And think for a moment about not causing harm, and how that might relate to you in your life. So many things will spring to mind for me. There will be many regrets that I think of, where I think perhaps I could have done things differently. But that's beside the point. We leave all of that behind. We want to focus on the now and where we are now, and what is the relationship that I'm having with my body at this moment. Am I forcing it to sit so that I look good on camera, or am I just sitting comfortably and acknowledging the needs of my body? So perhaps the first thing I need to think about is, do I need some kind of support? Is my body okay in this position that I'm sitting in? And I might want to get closer to a wall, bring my buttocks right up close. I want to perhaps support my lower back and place a cushion between my lower back and that wall. And I want to make sure that if I sit with my legs crossed, that it's actually acceptable to my body. Because if I've got hip problems and knee problems or ankle problems even, it may not be appropriate for me to be sitting in this position even. And this is the danger that sometimes we come to in yoga, that we're so obsessed with the beauty of the posture that we perhaps forget to consider the body's needs. So if my hips don't want to open out right away, I might just place a cushion or a blanket or as many cushions as I need to prop up that leg position, so that there's no longer any straining taking place in my hip joint. I might want to support my feet a bit more. Maybe my ankles are uncomfortable, and I might just place a blanket underneath my feet so that they're cushioned slightly, so that there's less tension and less of a hard surface. There's more give, in other words, on the surface that I'm resting my feet on. Lots and lots of ideas. I sit on a block, and I always use that block because I recognize that for me personally, I have a scoliosis, I have a curvature in my spine. My spine needs a little bit more support than other people's, and my hips, if they're going to open out freely, as inevitably they do eventually, they'll need that little bit of lift to start with so that I can be comfortable. My body can feel at ease, can feel relaxed and safe, knowing that I'm not going to push it into some posture that doesn't agree with it, that's going to cause it harm. So all of these things we take into consideration when we come to work with Ahimsa, non-violence, not causing harm. So let's just begin a practice and just see. We want to start with very simple movements, and no matter what theme you've chosen, always begin with tiny movements to explore that theme in relation to your body without the challenge of a strong asana practice. So I'm sitting, I'm comfortable, and I'm going to start to chant those 3 Oms with a nice deep sound that allows me to sense the vibrational energy. In other words, that resonance of the sound in my body. And it's not a singing lesson, and so I'm not going to enter an abusive, judgmental relationship about the sound of my voice. I'm going to just let that sound come just as it is, nice and deep. Taking a deep breath then. So all I want to experience here is the resonance and the deep sound. And that deep sound penetrates into the densest of bodily tissues, which is bone tissue. So I can feel that resonating even in my bones, because it's a nice deep sound. And it's not about singing. If it was, I'd be bottom of the singing class, but I'm not going to go there. I'm quite happy with that resonance, with that feeling of vibrational energy in my body. So no judgment with Ahimsa. Now I'm going to think about moving my body, making my body at ease before I begin full yoga practice. And we're just going to do a few movements here. We're not going to do a lot. So to start with, when we consider Ahimsa, non-violence, perhaps the first thing we might do is Pavanmuktasana, releasing the joints. So I've stretched my legs out. I can feel energy flowing down through my legs now. And focusing on my toes, I'm going to spread my toes wide, not too much to start with, and then gently squeeze and bend them. Now we begin with small movements, because if we start with strong movements, the body resists. And often we find that we go into cramps and we feel uncomfortable, even from a very simple movement. So we start with tiny movements and gradually we let those movements increase. And what's happening here is that I sense my toes moving, but I also sense the whole of my foot opening and squeezing. So there's an energetic pulsation, if you like, that's coming into my feet as I carry out this movement. At the moment, it's fairly isolated to my feet, but I'm going to take that a little bit further. I'm going to start to point my toes as I squeeze and bend them, and then I'm going to stretch my toes towards me as I spread them wide. And this has brought the movement now into the whole of my leg, right up to my hip joint. So now I'm experiencing this movement in the whole of my leg, but I'm still squeezing and stretching my toes, my feet, and at the same time I'm getting a nice stretch all through my legs. The movement, because I'm still thinking in terms of Ahimsa, feels good. My body responding nicely to it will want to open into it a little bit more each time I move it. So gradually the body responds to that subtle small movement that we made in the beginning and instinctively wants to take it a little bit further. Let's make a rotation now. When we make the rotation, still spreading the toes and squeezing and bending them, we've got this feeling now that this is really coming from my hips, the hips where your legs join your upper body. You can really sense that movement. And again, Ahimsa, this feels good. I can take it a little bit further even. And if I hear any clicking and popping, I need to know that that's not painful, that my joints aren't painful, because clicking and popping is often something that we all experience. And as long as it isn't painful, then that's okay. So I'm going to rotate around the opposite way and I'm going to explore how that feels, because sometimes moving in another direction can really feel very different. So just observing, no judgment, no criticism, Ahimsa, just allowing the body to find its way into this movement. Pavanmuktasana, releasing the air element, the excess of air element from the joints. I'm going to move into my knees now, so I'm going to bend one knee, slide in, slide out. Here I'm aware of hips, I'm aware of core support. Maybe my spine won't sustain this, so perhaps I just need a tiny movement here to begin with. Nothing too strong. Never be afraid to start out with a small, gentle movement, because the body gradually feels safe. And if we keep that idea of ahimsa, the body responds beautifully, eventually wanting to take that a little bit further without excessive tension or strain. So gradually I might go a little further, and I'm observing everything that's taking place in my body, because although it's knees, it's hips, it's core, it's spine, it's all sorts of things. Okay, so next movement, perhaps if I bend my knee and place my hands under the knee, lifting up through my spine. I want to feel comfortable, I want to feel supported from gravity. I'm going to raise my leg and stretch it up, turning the toes towards me. This feels nice. If it doesn't feel nice, don't stretch so much. Just see where your body wants to go. And then bending the knee. See if you can let that lower leg flop, become really relaxed and free. It's not easy sometimes because we hold a lot of tension in our bodies habitually. So let's try again, stretching and then bending and just flopping. Okay, and same on the other side then, so we can bend and lift, stretch into the back of the leg as much as your body wants to, always respecting that principle of ahimsa. And again, just release and see how much you can free up that lower leg. Okay, now a little bit further, I'm going to explore bringing my heel in towards me. And for some of you, your body will resist and it won't want to go there. So you just keep moving in and out gently until your body begins to respond and feel a little bit more comfortable with that movement. But if you're good with this movement, you can maybe tuck your heel into the groin on its own side. Again, support wherever you need support, and check in with your sit bones, because gravity gives you really nice support. We're holding this idea of ahimsa, non-violence. I'm going to hold my right foot with my left hand, and I'm going to hold my knee with my right hand, and I'm going to just bring the knee up and gently ease it over. I'm not really pushing, just easing it over, so that when I release it, there's this nice feel of release there. The hip can open out a bit more, and again you can always support that so that it feels nice and easy. So again, just lift and ease over, and then gently release. Okay, keep that support there if you need it. You may have gone far enough. We're not trying to push the body, we're just seeing where we want to go with our movements. And we can set challenges, but they need to always encompass that principle of ahimsa, not causing harm. So here we could do a gentle stretch from the hips. So moving forward over the left leg here, keeping the spine straight, and just see where your body wants to go. Now I'll reach a place where my thigh begins to tighten, my knee perhaps will bend a little, and I feel that perhaps I've gone far enough, so I might just stay there a moment and allow my body to feel comfortable in that position and to settle a bit more in that position. So patience is a really important requirement when we're working with ahimsa, not causing harm. So if that feels good, I can come back up again and just explore perhaps a little twist, bringing my left hand round and just gently twisting round to release everything, turning forward again. I'm going to just explore that stretch again and just see where I want to go. Now again, I've reached that point, and it may be that my body will let me go a little bit further each time, but I'm not going to force it or push it. I'm just going to go wherever I feel confident. So obviously I've been doing this a long time, so I find my way into the position, recognizing that my body feels okay. I might need to wait a bit. I might need to find some adjustments. I might need to release a little, perhaps even in my leg. And sometimes, definitely when I'm demonstrating, I'll put too much effort into something because I'm trying to show you what it is we're trying to achieve. So I have to let go of all of those things. I have to be totally immersed in this idea of non-violence, of ahimsa. And then if I'm good with that, I can bring my arms forward perhaps and lower my head down. And honestly, it's not strained. It doesn't feel uncomfortable. It feels easy and a lovely stretch. And I can rest here for a moment and just explore the feel of that stretch. And when I'm ready to, I slowly come up. And when I come up, I just explore the opening sensation as I come back into my sitting position, keeping that idea of not causing harm. What does my body need now in order to release any possible tension that I may have created in carrying out that movement? So for me, I'm just going to do that little twist again, nice and easy, not too much. I might choose to twist round the other way, and then I'll carry out the movement on the other side. So same thing, you slide in. You might want to support that leg. You might want to place a block. You're going to do the Pavan Muktasana in the hip joint there. And for some of you, your leg might not go so close. So for you, the practice is simply sliding in and sliding out. There's no pressure in yoga other than the pressure we place on ourselves, and that is where ahimsa comes in. And so eventually we carry out the whole practice on the other side, and once we've completed that practice, we can carry on with any selected yoga practice that we might choose to do at home or in class, always holding that idea in our heads of ahimsa, not causing harm. So I hope that's clear for you. And in class it's very different. I can sort of think of all kinds of other angles to it when I watch people as they move. But for now, this is my experience of ahimsa, and I hope it's useful to you and that you're able to work with ahimsa now as a theme for at least 10 to 12 weeks in your yoga practice from home. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you.